There are three basic trance bass lines, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make them. We're also going to look at how to create a nice drive to go along with it.
This is a Firewalk production.
I've been getting a lot of requests to make some bass lines, so in this video, we're going to be making some basic trance bass lines. The first thing I'm going to do is add a kick. If this is your first time here, then make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as the bell notification icon so that you'll be notified the next time I upload a video. And as always, feel free to hit that like button or leave a comment. There are three fundamental trance bass lines. The first is the standard offbeat bass. It goes like this. This is the kind of bass that Ali and Philly uses. It's the simplest kind of bass there is, regardless of genre. You have a kick, bass, and so on. It may be simple, but it's very effective. Next, there's the rolling bass lines. Let's turn this into a 16th note and duplicate it. Now we have a rolling bass line. You can adjust the length of the notes to make it more distinct. If they are too close, they will tend to sound like one sustained note, and that's not what we're after. We want to hear two separate notes playing. This sounds fine for now. The way you EQ the bass will also play a vital role in this regard. If you want to learn more about EQing, then you should check out my How to EQ tutorial. You can find the link in the description below. The last bass line is also a rolling bass line. It's the standard triplets. Let's just add another note and voila, we have triplets. I like to adjust the first of the three notes so that it'll be a little bit shorter than the next two, as this will generate a nicer groove. You can also play around with the velocity. I sometimes like to reduce the velocity on the first note. This will have the same effect as sidechaining, so keep this in mind when you sidechain. One thing you need to be careful with when it comes to bass lines is that your bass is not interfering with the kick. Be sure to sidechain your bass. It's very important that the kick is allowed to cut through the mix, or you'll end up with a muddy low end. The bass lines I just showed you are the three basic trance bass lines out there. This would typically be the sub-bass in a track. I'm just going to add some percussion elements real quick, as it usually doesn't sound great with just a kick and a bass going on their own. You'll get a much better feel for it when there's a groove going. will usually be several more layers of mid-bass to go along with the sub-bass. Let's apply some EQ to make room for all the sub-frequencies. The mid-basses don't have to follow the same pattern. For example, we could do something like this. Or perhaps invert this part like this. I encourage you to come up with something fresh and unique rather than just playing it safe and going with what's considered the standard. Because, let's face it, if everyone is doing the exact same thing, Then it will quickly become very boring. The tracks that stand out are always different from the rest. As you can see, there's a lot of ways to make trance bass lines. The percussion and overall groove of the track plays an important role too, as they all interact with each other. When it comes to sidechain, the rule of thumb that I would recommend is as follows. The lower the frequency goes, the heavier you should sidechain. The sub-bass should be sidechained very aggressively, while you can get away with a medium sidechain for the mid-basses, depending on where you choose to low cut. I have several tutorials about different ways to sidechain if you're interested. I've added the links to those tutorials in the description below as well. There's one more thing you need to be aware of, and this is important. When using a bass line such as the triplets, you need to make sure that your kick does not interfere with the first of the 3 notes. We want to be able to hear all 3 notes clearly, which means that you can't use aggressive sidechain. If you do that, it'll take out most of the first note. In this case, you'll have to shorten the tail of the kick instead. I'm now going to show you a little trick that you can use to tighten up your kick and bass. In most cases, the tail of the kick will go on after the bass starts, especially in uplifting trance. Sidechain will help a lot, but there's still some overlapping regardless. If you go to the channel rack and click on the kick, the sampler will pop up. Now you can click here to get to the envelope settings. Now you can shorten the kick like this. The tail will now end before the sub-bass hits, making everything much tighter. Ideally, there should be a visual representation of the sample waveform in the background here. That would make it easier to decide how to shape the envelopes instead of doing it by ear. Perhaps in a future version of FL Studio? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Note that this won't work if you use a kick sample in the playlist. You have to trigger it from the step sequencer in order to access the envelope settings. Alternatively, you can use a transient designer to edit the kick. Using a very short kick is part of the reason why psytrance sounds the way it does. It's very dynamic and powerful. Every note and every sample has its own place in the mix, with plenty of room to breathe. Let me quickly show you part of a psytrance project I'm working on to show you what I mean. As you can hear, the kick is very short, and the bass is very snappy despite the fact that I've used triplets here. Dynamic range is important as well. You can use a compressor on your bass bus, or make a kick and bass bus to tighten up the low end like this. But be careful when it comes to compression. An overly compressed track will of course be loud, but if you compress too far, then it will become less punchy. This is where the psychoacoustic effect comes into play again. This has to do with how we as humans perceive sound. When listening to music containing different elements, in order for something to be perceived as loud, something else has to be quiet. Our brains need a frame of reference. That's why dynamic tracks tend to sound punchier. Hopefully now you have a basic understanding on how various trance bass lines work. If you like this video, then feel free to hit that like button. And if you really liked it, you can head over to my Patreon page and support my work there. You can find the link in the description below. I hope this was helpful. Hey, what kind of tutorial would you like me to make next? Also, if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below and I'll try to answer them for you.